So if you're a fan of my channel, then you probably know this Block II setup right here. This is a clone of my work gun that I used back in 2015, my last tour in Afghanistan. Hard to believe it's almost 10 years ago now, but this rifle has made numerous appearances on my channel. I did a Geisley URGI upper against this quite some time back, a few months ago. I'll put a link down in the description. And this has shown up in numerous articles that I've done in print and online. I did an article called Cloning Done Right for SWAT magazine. This was in a few years ago, right before they went out of publication. And in a defensereview.com article, the build episode 2, I go over front to back this entire setup right here. But honestly, the quality of that video is really kind of lacking. So I wanted to make an updated video where I go over this entire setup, why I ran it this way, and basically how it performed. So let's get into my ultimate Block II clone right now. All right, here's a clone of my work gun. Now I did not run an N4 light down range, I just stuck it on here. But let me start at the back of the gun and go forward. Arc Defense buttstock and that BCM gunfighter grip I used for 2 tours. That ambi selector lever on my work gun, I ran a DPMS brand, I don't know what that is. Arredondo extended magazine well, I have 3 tours on that. That is a Ready Mag Gen 1 extended bolt latch, a necessity for a lefty. Now the K&S pins and that Norgon ambi mag release I did not run on my work gun, I just got it on my clone right here. Flipping around to the other side, you're going to see that's a Geisley Super semi-automatic trigger. And Special Forces went with the Geisley Super Select Fire trigger around 2013, so that would be clone correct. And that is a Fur-Franz bolt carrier. I have separate videos on that. And of course, I have a little cage code stick around there, make it look a little bit more legit. And that sling mounts are the ones I use downrange. Starting at the front of the gun, Surefire 4-prong flash hider, and that Daniel Defense RIS-2 front sight post rail. That Velcro on the mag pull pad is for the pressure pad of my LA5. At the back of the gun, Predator offset mount. I ran both a Doctor Sight and an EOTech MRDS, and of course that VCOG in 1:6 with a 55 grain BDC. And lots of dings on both the VCOG and that Predator offset mount. I've fallen numerous times. The VCOGs held 0. Predator offset mount really protected the optic. And the charging handles, I've used both a Raptor and a BCM gunfighter. I might have had the Raptor on my rifle during the last tour. Now, yes, you may have noticed I'm in BDUs right now. These are, in fact, the same BDUs that I wore downrange, modified with pockets. I had these modified back when I was in 5th Special Forces Group. I'm feeling a little nostalgic, so I figured I'd throw them on for this video. In social media, whenever photos of me pop up online, most people confuse me for MARSOC. The reason why we wore BDUs in SF is basically to match the Afghan commandos. They wore BDUs, so we wore BDUs just to kind of blend in that distance. So we kind of look like Afghan commandos and not stick out so much as Americans. Now, back to this rifle. I did rock it on 6 power the entire time. I relied on my offset red dot for really anything 100 yards and under. I never used the Illum on this. And some people say, well, hey, if you run this on 6 power the whole time, why not go for, say, a 2-10 or 3-15? And of course, you have the offset red dot to cover that, still 100 yards and under. Well, many Green Berets, they did rock longer, more powerful optics on their rifles. Again, you're not really stretching the capability of this rifle. It's still about really in practicality, it's still a 500 meter or 500 yard gun in 5.56. But that higher magnification allows you obviously a better chance of hitting targets within that 500 meter, 500 yard spectrum. Now in training, we stretch these all the way out to 650. You can hit 650 with 77 grain Mark II 6.2, but on a human target running around, things like that, yeah, these can handle 500 meters all day long. I stayed with a 1:6 basically just because I wanted redundancy. If this offset red dot ever did go out, well, then I have the capability of knocking this down to 1 power and of course being able to do close range shooting. So even though I'm not rocking backup rear iron sight, I do have a little bit of redundancy, and the scope is capable of going down to 1 if I need it, and I do have this offset red dot. 3 for 3. Now this setup right here is really the pinnacle in evolution based on my experience in Afghanistan. I actually started my third tour running a suppressed Mark 18, except this time, of course, I had this VCOG and not an LCAN. And one reason why the Mark 18 was so popular within Special Forces, even though Afghanistan, we know it's a long-range fight, is the balance. Mark 18 suppressed is one of the best balanced platforms out there. It's not too long, it's not too front heavy, and it's just a dream to shoot when it's suppressed. And that's why they were so popular with Special Forces. Once you put a suppressor on a 14.5, it does get kind of front heavy, and I'll talk about overall weight here in a little bit. And guys, that kind of just drove guys away from running the 14.5 suppressed. It's kind of a front heavy long system. And with a Mark 18, you can hit out 500 meters. Now one can argue the ballistics of what 5.56 is doing at 500 yards, but you can hit at 500 meters or 500 yards with a Mark 18. And while I'm again known for this channel, in my series of competition to combat crossover articles for defensereview.com, where I basically document my rifle setups from my time in Afghanistan. In one of those articles, I do talk about really how this is just a PDW, meaning that when you're engaged by that long-range threat, of course you're going to return fire, but you're going to bring better weapon systems to bear against that threat. So you're going to open up with your belt feds, you're going to employ 60mm mortars handheld. It's a favorite tool of Special Forces back in Afghanistan days. We got miniguns, we got 50 cals. We have all these better tools to use at the long range threat. And of course this shines when you're at close quarters, and it shines really within that 200 to 300 meter spectrum. But again, you can hit out to 500 meters. And we trained all the time with an LCAN to hit out to 650 with your 14.5. So you can do it. But yeah, I started my third tour with a Mark 18, and how I ended up going to a 14.5 is actually kind of a funny story. So it was our second mission outside the wire. We're broken into two different elements. So we had one element completely dismounted, and they were patrolling around, basically doing movement to contacts. I was with the vehicles in a defilade behind a hill. This photo right here was taken about an hour before the gunfight actually started. We had the dismount element moving around, doing a movement to contact. We're trying to draw the enemy to attack that smaller dismounted element, and then I'd come swooping in with the gun trucks, the MAT Vs and the RGs. We had 50 cals and miniguns, all the heavy weapons to basically do a hammer and anvil. But the firefight really did not turn out that way. Basically, the Taliban opened up on the dismounted element and my element at the same time. So we really weren't fooling anybody. But in this photo, again, back to this photo right here, in these fields right here, I ended up pushing the enemy past those fields, dismounted. One of my guys was drawn down on a corner of a building. One of the Taliban kept popping in and out of a corner of a building. I saw this too, and I was like, hey, instead of just trying to take pop shots, why don't we get the Carl Gustav, that is, and fire a Carl Gustav round at the corner of the building, just take out the whole corner of the building where the guy was hiding. My team guy, he knew I had an ulterior motive for wanting him to get the Carl Gustav, and that's because I wanted to steal his shot. I wanted to take a shot with my rifle and zap that guy. And lo and behold, as my teammate was getting the Carl Gustav, that insurgent popped out. I ranged him at 200 yards. I took two well-aimed shots with this bad boy, or my work gun of it, and I missed. Both rounds were perfectly in line with the target. They fell about 20 yards short. So my range estimation, I think, was spot on. But with that Mark 18 in this VCOG, I thought I had my holds right for the BDC, but I was off. And under stress, the 200 yard was really not 200 yards or 200 meters, and I came up short. So it was after that engagement that I went to the 14.5 just to have the ballistics of 5.56, or that 7.62, or not, excuse me, not 7.62, the Mark 2.62 77 grain better match the BDC in the VCOG. So under stress, when you only have 2, 3, maybe 5 seconds at most to engage a target that pops out, I could line up and hopefully make better shots. Now, for the record, after I missed that guy, he ducked behind the building. We did call in Apaches to do gun runs behind that building, so hopefully that insurgent still did not make it out. But yeah, that's why the rest of the tour, I ran this setup right here. All right, 9-shot drill, 3 targets, 3 shots each, starting on the center target first. Let me do a run with the offset red dot. Par time under 3 seconds. Woo! And I am clean. Just in there, but I'm in there 296. Let's run the VCOG on 1 power. All right, let's see what I got. Woo, my hits are low. Looks like I'm still clean. 272. Let me run that offset red dot, see if I can match it. One more run. Woo! 279, and looking at the targets, that second run actually threw a C. So right now the offset red dot is ahead for your 5 and 7 yard shooting, which is what it's really designed to do. Now in the range footage, I am rocking these Walker's Recon electronic hearing protection. Yes, I did receive these free to try. Really the only obligation was, hey, if I liked them, would I mind mentioning them in one of my videos? And yeah, these are definitely mention worthy. They work really well. Actually, I think they block more sound than the normal earmuffs, or they're a little more quieter, to put it that way. And really the one thing I like about these the most is the volume control. Instead of having to dial through the volume control every time to find that perfect individual setting, well, with these, you dial it, and then when you go to shut them off, you press the button. And when you press it to turn back on, these seem to remember that last setting. So it saves a little bit of hassle there. And I like that. That's kind of cool. So yeah, these work really well. They have a 3.5 millimeter connection, so you can plug in some tunes. And they have an upgrade package if you want to run these comms with walkie-talkies. And price-wise, these are $69.95, so they're comparable to just about every other brand of electronic hearing protection out there. And of course, electronic hearing protection is a must. Again, it's 2024. Why would you not rock electronic hearing protection? So again, these are Walker's Recon electronic hearing protection. So let me talk about manual of arms when it comes to reload and why I really love this Ready Mag bolt extension or bolt catch lever on the gun right here. Now I'm a lefty, so my reloads are slow. And yes, I've got the Norgon Ambi mag release on here, but honestly, after multiple years in the Army of not having one, even though it's on this gun right here, more often than not, I did not put one on a work gun. Even if it was there, I did not use it. If you watch any of my videos, I'm usually pulling the mag out of my rifle for a reload. Yes, that is slower, but let me tell you why I do that. It has to do with operating in the Middle East and in that sandy, dirty, dusty environment. Whether you're gonna do a vehicle infill or worse, some sort of helicopter infill where dust is blowing everywhere. The reason why I pull my mags is once sand and dust gets up in the mag well, sometimes empties have a tendency to stick. They won't drop free. So I just got in the habit of always, and because I'm a lefty, my thumb is on the mag release button, of pulling it and dropping it. I know it's not the fastest reload out there, but it is the most positive method of getting that magazine out. And in combat, positivity counts more than speed sometimes. Well, let me talk about the manual of arms. So I've got an empty mag in the gun. For the reload, I use the extended bolt catch lever 2 different ways. One is I'll hit it with my trigger finger, or I'll slap it to get the gun back in battery. So I'll do both real quick. So I'm shooting, gun goes empty, thumb on the mag release, I drop that mag, pull up my fresh mag, I'll stick it in. Sometimes I'll just lever it with my trigger finger, and let me reload this thing and I'll do the slap, but I'm ready to go right here. Now the next way I actually utilized this extended bolt catch lever, probably the primary way I utilized it to get my gun back into battery, was to do a slap on it. Now it's not the fastest way, but again, it's the most positive way, especially when you're working under nods, you're working at night, you can't see your gun, it sticks out about an inch, and it makes it really easy to slap the side of it. And that's probably how I employed it the most. Let me do a quick demo. So the gun's empty. Thumb, eject that mag, pull it, insert the new mag, and I would just slap it. Not the fastest, but again, the most positive. You definitely know you're hitting that bolt catch, letting the bolt go back into battery, and the gun's ready to go. Especially, again, when you're wearing gloves. At night, you could be running and gunning. You can't see the gun at all. You don't want to slow down to get it in your peripheral. I can just slap the slide and I know the gun's in the battery. So that's really why I like this. I only got 2 or 3 of these. But yeah, definitely a cool item. They don't make them anymore. I think there's a Gen 2, but it's a different design. Doesn't stick out as far. Now, I definitely was not the first SF guy to rock a dual optic rifle. Many Green Berets before me were rocking dual optic carbines, but honestly, it's 2024 now, and dual optic rifles really are the standard. If you go back to 2017, or it might have been 2018, when US soldiers first went into Syria, all the special operations guys, a majority of them, were running dual optic carbines, at least a red dot and a magnifier, but a lot of them were running some sort of LPVO and an offset red dot. You're set up to handle both short-range targets and long-range targets. And like I said in one video I made, setting up your rifle based on the mission is wrong, which I will put a link down in the description. I got lots of interesting comments when I made that video. Your rifle needs to be set up how the enemy fights. And if you don't know how the enemy fights because you have no experience with them yet, well, then you need to set up your rifle to handle all different aspects of a gunfight, short range and long range. So a single optic carbine, like a rifle with just a red dot, to me, that's 2015-ish. It's 2024. I think all weapons should have dual capability, be able to handle long range threats and short range threats. So dual optics is the new standard. It's been the standard, I would say, for at least the last 5 years. Now, quite some time ago, I did an article for the Loadout Room titled Mounting an IR Laser on Your M4, You're Probably Doing It Wrong, where I basically explained why my LA5 was mounted rearward on my rail and offset here on the left-hand side. And I did that basically because if you mount the LA5 right here between the front sight post and the VCOG, then my hand would always be on top of that LA5 the entire time, interfering with my natural C-clamp style grip. And I did that basically based on how the Afghans fought. The Afghans don't fight at night. They always come out during the day. So I set up my rifle to really fight in the optimum time when the enemy is out, and that's in daylight. So why have that LA5 interfere with my primary grip when if I do need it, it's still on my gun, and offset even on a side rail, it still works. You can zero it, it works just fine. So I placed it basically there. Again, the enemy fought during the day, so why have my gun set up for nighttime fighting? Again, hindering a perfect grip. So that's why I did that in there. I got a lot of blowback on that too. The IR lasers, they work just fine side mounted. As long as you know your holds and you got a good zero, they work just fine. So let's talk about downsides to this platform right here. Now, of course, many Green Berets did not like the RIS-2 rail, the one even without the front sight post hole in it, just because they don't like the quad rail. They thought it was too thick. I actually prefer the quad rail. I like it, so it didn't really apply to me, but there are downsides to how this rifle's set up right here. First is the weight. With this VCOG mounted on here, this is a heavy setup. When I was using it in Afghanistan with an LA5 and a Surefire SOCOM suppressor on here and a full magazine, this setup weighs just over 11 pounds, which is no big deal for a day on the flat range. But I'm telling you, 3 or 4 days of hiking the mountains of Afghanistan with this setup right here, all rigged up, it got super old really fast. 11.5 pounds, it was almost at, is really right on the edge of just being too heavy. That's why I'm very skeptical and I'm very critical of the Army going to that M7 rifle with optics, lights, lasers, and suppressed. That gun is around 13 pounds. I think that's going to be way too heavy for the average soldier. Yes, out on the flat range, they're probably like, hey, this thing's not too bad. Well, spend a few days with that gun stuck to your body, and 13 pounds is going to get old really fast. And the other criticism of this setup has to do with the VCOG itself. Front focal, So when you enlarge the reticle, it grows to match the magnification with the BDC and all that. But the center dot is way too large when it expands on 6 power and obscures fine targets. So if you're trying to aim at a head, say 300 yards or so, the center dot obscures the entire head. So it's hard to really put a defined aiming point on small targets. That's my criticism with the VCOG itself. But yeah, really the drawback of this system with the suppressor, front heavy, and the general weight overall. Now, why is this referred to as the STUKA setup and not, say, the Jeff Gerwich setup? Well, it has to do with my username in a lot of gun forums like AR15.com. I am STUKAS87. And that comes from the Ju-87 dive bomber back in World War II, the STUKA dive bomber. I am STUKAS just because somebody already took STUKA87, so I added an S onto it. But because of that, STUKAS stuck with this rifle, and people just started referring to this as the STUKA setup, again, based off of my username in a lot of internet forums. And honestly, it does sound a lot cooler than calling this just the Jeff Gerwich setup, but that's where that came from. But really, if it came down to it and they're like, hey, Jeff, you are deploying again, would I take this exact setup? Or if I was offered to upgrade it, would I? And I probably would change the optic on it. It's 2024, 1:6s are way out of date. I would probably opt for a 1:8 or a 1:10. So I definitely would be looking at a newer Vortex scope, or maybe the Trijicon 1:8 that the Marines are running. I'd have to play with it, but I believe Vortex Razor has a 1:10. Again, not really to stretch the capability of this rifle. Of course, with an 8 power or 10 power, I believe 650-yard shots on human-sized targets would be very practical, very feasible, but again, to enhance within that 500-meter spectrum, and a 1:8 or a 1:10 would definitely help with that. So I'd probably upgrade the scope, but if this is all I had, then I would not feel hindered. So yes, that's one thing I might change if I was allowed to change it going into a future conflict. But yeah, this has served me well. Now I know clone purists, they're gonna knock me on, of course, this being an Adams Arms lower. And I do have a buddy, he's gonna hook me up in the next month or so with a genuine Colt lower. So I will get this more clone correct to a true work gun. Yeah, I know I have the K&S pins in here and things like that, so it's not an exact clone. But again, I just wanted this platform to match the same capability and shoot the same as the work gun I carried. And really has most of the stuff that I really used. All the accessories, again, have 1 or 2 tours, some items, multiple tours on them, like this Arredondo Magwell, been with me quite a while. So I wanted a platform to mount all the accessories I used during my time in service to, and I wasn't so much concerned with the actual brands and things like that. But I will get this closer to a real Colt rifle soon. But as always, hopefully you found this video entertaining and enjoyable. I'm Jeff Gerwich. Thanks for watching.